So I'm gonna start out by breaking the main axle nut. I'm gonna use my foot to stand on the breaker bar to use my body weight to break the nut. Easily broken there. Now I jack up the car and put it on jack stands for safety. First thing I'm going to do is to remove the brake caliper. There are two bolts holding the brake caliper, and that's one of the bolts and the other is below. So that's the top one removed, and now I am removing the bottom bolt. It's always advised to not have the caliper swing from the brake line. That might cause damage, and it might be very bad if you're driving and do not have brake. So I will use a tie strap to tie the brake caliper on the strut. Now I'm going to remove the two bolts that hold the strut to the knuckle, and I'm using a power wrench which was not strong enough to remove these bolts. These bolts are seized, so I'm going to use a breaker bar to first break the nuts before using the power tool. So all I need to do is to get it moving. Then I can use the impact wrench to finish the job. As you can see there, the nut came off very easily. So I'm going to apply the same process to the lower nut. So I first gonna get it moving, and it takes a lot of strength to get it moving though. So the bigger and longer your breaker bar is, the better. But after it moves, using the wrench, I can get it off pretty easily, just like that. So now I'm going to remove the outer tie rod end. First remove the safety pin, then use a socket to remove the nut below, and afterwards I'll use a hammer applying pressure to the outer tie rod end while hitting the knuckle, and be careful to only hit the knuckle here, and it popped right out. Now I'm removing 3 nuts holding the lower ball joint. It's better to remove the 3 nuts holding the ball joint to the lower control arm. I like this design from Toyota. It's easy to remove the ball joint from a Toyota. Now I'm going to use an hammer to knock out the 2 bolts holding the strut to the spindle, because these tend to be difficult to get out sometimes. But to completely get them out, I have to use anything that can fit in that space, and I'm currently using a smaller bolt that is long enough to hit it out. But before moving the second bolt, I'm first going to remove the ABS sensor. So you don't want to damage your ABS sensor. So after I get the ABS sensor out, I'm going to finish knock out the bolt that holds the strut to the spindle. And at this point, after removing the center axle nut, I am able to completely remove the spindle and the lower ball joint. This is the sound of a bad ball joint. This is the annoying sound you hear while driving on the road. Completely destroyed. Now it's time to work on the bearing. First, remove this dust shield. Take a look at the ball joint here. The ball joint, as you can see, it's very loose and shaking. They need to be replaced. To remove the snap ring, you're going to need the right snap ring tool. But for me, I use 2 screwdrivers which work well for me. It takes time, but this is the only way I can get it out because I do not have the right snap ring tool. This is the OEM snap ring, and you will need a specific snap ring tool to remove this type of snap ring. This snap ring is much easier to work with, but this is not the one that is installed. The snap ring tool that I have works with this snap ring. You now need to remove the hub. So now I'm going to use a large socket here that I don't really use to hit the hub out. This is not advised, but this does the job very well. I find it's much easier to remove the hub. You can use a tool like this or this, but I find it much easier to knock it out while being careful. Now it's time to remove the bearing. I'll be using this kit right here that I bought on Amazon. I am going to put a link in the description below. So I'm just going to take out the ones that I need. But having an hydraulic press can do this job way easier. If I did not purchase this kit, I would have added some more money to what I spent to buy a 12-ton hydraulic press. It would do the job way faster, way easier. Now I'm going to take these parts of the bearing out, and looking at it, it's dry, not much grease inside. So I'm wondering how the grease disappeared in such a short period of time. I installed those bearings about 8 months ago. That is why I recommend buying OEM bearing. There is a rubber at the front of the bearing that you need to get out so that you can easily press the old bearing out. So now you need to set up your bearing kit. I first use a small fitting in the front, and then you need to use a large fitting at the back, and whatever you can use. And at the back you use a piece that is big enough for the old bearing to slide into. I am using the hub as an extension, so now I am just screwing down the main nut that is really the driver to remove the bearing. And now it's time to let the impact driver do its thing. So if you have a bench vise to hold the spindle in, it would make this job better, or if you have a shop press. But at this point, I have to use my hands to hold the spindle. If you have a friend or family that can help you with this, it would make it easier, but I'm doing it all by myself, so I was kind of struggling to hold the other end. But it is working though. So all you need to do is to continue to use the impact wrench to press out the bearing. In my case, the piece at the back was a little bit too small, so the bearing got stuck in that piece and I had to cut it out. So I would advise, if you have a Toyota Camry, you should get the bearing out halfway and then probably use a hammer to knock it out the rest of the way. If you try to take the bearing out fully, with this kit that I have, bearing is gonna be stuck in the piece at the back. As you can see right here, the bearing is out and it got stuck in the piece that was at the back, and I had to cut it out. So now the bearing is out. All I'm going to do now is just to clean it up with some WD-40, and it is recommended to have your bearing in your freezer the night before installing. Now it's time to press the new bearing in the spindle. I am using the old bearing to press the new bearing in, because the old bearing is of the same size of the new bearing, so it will fit right on the edge. You do not want any piece to rest on the center of the bearing, because that will totally destroy your bearing. So I am setting up the kit right now to press it in. To press in the bearing, you want to start out very slowly. Make sure the bearing is going in straight. So from time to time, you might need to remove the tool, check it to see if it's going in straight, and then restart. So I made some adjustments and then I'm going to restart. So you just take your time, make all the adjustments you need to make. So you just continue to work the bearing in, take your time. If you need to release it, make some adjustment. So once the bearing is in far enough for the snap ring to be installed, that's when you know when to stop. You could also know when to stop when you notice that you're not able to press the bearing in any further. So now I'm going to do a final press to get the bearing totally in. So the bearing is fully installed. So now it's time to install the snap ring. The snap ring is way more easier to install than to remove. You just need to get one side in and just squeeze the other side in with a screwdriver, and then you can use that same screwdriver to knock it all the way down. But you need to ensure that the ring is snapped right in. So just do a proper inspection. So now it's time to install the dust shield. Making some adjustment to the dust shield because I bent it a little when removing it. So the dust shield is in. But there's a hole in the dust shield that the ABS sensor goes through, so you need to ensure that that hole is aligned with the dust shield. So to remove the piece of bearing that is left on the hub, I use this cut tool to make a cut on the piece of bearing. Then I use a chisel to hit between the cut to crack it open. Then I use the same chisel to hit between the bearing and the hub, and I totally removed it. And this is the hub after I removed the piece of bearing that was stuck on it. Time to install the hub. So you want to place the hub to the front, and the important thing about installing the hub, that the piece at the back should only rest on the center part of the bearing. You do not want the piece at the back to touch anywhere except the inner part of the bearing. So you want to use a very small piece at the back when pressing in the wheel hub in the bearing. And to press in the bearing is much easier. But as I said before, if I had a bench vise, that would make the job easier. But if you have a shop press, that is the easiest way to do this job. I think I'm going to invest in a shop press very soon.